Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on the channel. Hope you guys are doing well. If you are by any means a fan of Doki Doki Literature Club or the psychological genre in general, then boy have I got a treat for you today. And that is because I will be covering the visual novel game You and Me and Her, A Love Story. As this title is a little bit of a mouthful, I will just be referring to it as You, Me and Her. And lastly, right before I get into talking about the game, I want to give a mini shout out to Donny Productions for inspiring me and gifting me the game when it was my birthday. He is currently sat around 400 subscribers, so if you guys can get him up to half a thousand, that'll be very much appreciated. Thanks a lot, Donny Productions. This birthday gift has left me traumatized. But anyway, now that we have that out of the way, I can start talking about the actual game. Now, for one, it is quite similar to Doki Doki, and it actually came out 3 years after that game. But even though it is similar to Doki Doki Literature Club, especially in the fact that both psychological horrors and imitate a Japanese visual novel, they are their own distinct game with their own little quirks. If anything, personally I think You, Me and Her does a better job at just disguising itself as your regular Japanese visual novel, especially because the voice acting is actually Japanese in this, and DDLC didn't have any voice acting at all. Well, except from the ending credit bit, but you know what I mean. You, Me and Her has hundreds upon hundreds of lines of dialogue which are all narrated. However, You, Me and Her doesn't only disguise itself as a regular visual novel, but also it disguises itself as a romance, and it obviously leads to psychological horror, but it does it in a lot more of a discreet fashion than DDLC did. It also feels quite a lot more of a niche game and way more stylized than DDLC in terms of its art style and narrative. And you can take an example of this literally just by looking at the sprites of the characters. They look a lot more general manga anime-esque in DDLC, whilst in You, Me and Her they're a lot more stylized and differently made. Nitro Plus, the team responsible for development of this game, have managed to put together something very experimental, technically sound and overall well made. Whilst the game does adapt certain features and aspects of other games in a similar genre, it definitely makes sure to create its own identity. So whilst yeah, sure, I admit it, I was constantly comparing this game to DDLC during my playthrough, I did really enjoy it to be its own game as it provided a very new experience. In terms of being a technically sound game, I really do mean it. This thing is absolutely polished to the brim with virtually no bugs or errors whatsoever. Well, not ones that are unintentional, if you get what I mean. For some reason, it definitely feels as if though this game kind of fell off the radar when it first released in 2020, although I do think it's getting a little bit more recognition. I think probably because of the steep price tag of around $25, it's not as popular. Although what I'm about to say may sound a bit silly to you, or it's quite realistic I think. I would rather play DDLC, another psychological horror that's been like very critically acclaimed as free, rather than some random indie $25 game. That being said, I do think the price tag is a little bit high, but altogether it's worth it for the incredible experience. And as I said before, if you enjoy DDLC, then you're gonna have an absolute blast playing through this. Earlier on, I did mention the fact that this game disguises itself as a psychological horror a lot more than DDLC does. And when I say that, I truly do mean it. With this game, you have to pay attention to the smallest of details, and for the large majority of it, you probably will not speculate anything, and you'll be thinking to yourselves, wow, I paid $25 and this isn't even a psychological horror. Like, I'm not being disturbed in any way, shape or form. It's just a regular old visual novel. And I have to say that that is something DDLC did not make me feel like. Because with that game, pretty much straight from the get-go, I knew it was going to be a psychological horror and it will only go downhill. With this game, it was a lot more unexpected. I mean, let's just say you've been playing DDLC for half an hour, maybe even an hour, and it already starts to reveal its true self. Well, with this game, that probably doesn't happen until 5 hours of gameplay. It adapts some features from DDLC, and I mean not just DDLC, pretty much any visual novel where you can pause it, play it back, go to certain scenes, save it, settings, whatever, everything you kind of want. I truly do have to say, both the soundtrack and the visual design of this game are both beautiful and very well done. All of the characters, their uniform, their costumes, their facial expressions, even the background is all drawn to perfection and especially made to trick you. As I said earlier, you truly have to pay attention when trying to pick out the out of line, odd parts of the game that can kind of point towards some unsettling features. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes the game goes completely crazy, like the thumbnail for example, when you're in this completely different red dimension when one of the girls is Ayoi. Like seriously, in terms of the in-game scene, that thumbnail isn't photoshopped at all, that's genuinely a scene in the game. So yeah, maybe things do get just a little bit off the rails sometimes, but you have to bear with it, alright? It's all part of the experience and the narrative, and when you are playing it in the story, scenes like this, they kind of do make sense. In a little bit. Loading up the game for the first time and experiencing the first scene are both accompanied by the same classical piece that occasionally plays throughout the story. The piece that is chosen is very nice and dynamic, almost soothing to the ears, and completely contrasts what is later to come in the narrative. But don't worry, this amazing classical piece only makes up a fraction of the whole soundtrack, which the majority of it is all originally composed. It's almost like this game knows exactly when to incorporate the perfect piece for the mood, the character, or the surroundings. Your brain will very quickly automatically associate these tracks with certain characters and surroundings, like I said before. So when you hear this track, you know exactly what's coming next, or more so what you think is coming next. Right at its core, the game is exactly what the description says. You and Me and Her, a love story, is a multi-path visual novel from acclaimed developer Nitro Plus. It features beautiful artwork, music, and Japanese voice acting with full English text. Direct the story by making decisions at key points in the narrative. The ending is yours to decide. But of course, it's only a romantical visual novel at the surface of it all. You can dive very deep and find some things you probably don't want to find. As far as I'm aware, the Steam version did dial back some certain scenes which, let's just say, weren't exactly PG-13 friendly, that I think you can still find in the Japanese version somewhere, but I'm not really sure. I think the reason for this is because the publisher on Steam is Just USA, so this was meant for the USA market, not the Japanese. But don't worry, it only includes 1 or 2 extra scenes which I don't think are integral to the story, but yeah. The game revolves around 3 characters. The one you play, the protagonist, named Shinji, Ayoi, and Miyuki. There are also some other interesting characters along the way, but these are the 3 primary ones you spend time with. Miyuki is sort of like the cool, popular girl at school. Ayoi is the kind of distant one, and you don't really know any of her origins at all. And Shinji is just your run-of-the-mill MC. Before the story starts, he does have certain connections to Miyuki, but yeah, there isn't much interesting about him. But don't worry, amongst all of the horror and dread, there actually is one comic relief character among the bunch, who I unfortunately forgot the name of, but the track that plays when you're around them is quite iconic in the game sense. But just before I get into the spoiler-esque section of this video, I want to talk about this one Steam review that I think perfectly sums up the narrative. This game does a great job of making you feel like a terrible person. The decisions you make do matter, and they do impact those around you. By not holding true to those original beliefs, you will experience the consequences of your actions, and possibly hurt those you care about. At this point of this video, I absolutely urge you guys to do a blind playthrough yourself and go check this game out. Trust me, it is worth it if you can. Because I'm about to share some serious spoilers about the game, so this is your final warning. Okay, now that it's just the people who have either played the game or don't really care about it and just want to hear the ending, here we go. Throughout the game, you're given minor hints towards this, just like DDLC, just a lot more minor as I mentioned previously. But pretty much Miyuki is Monika. She is Monika, and personally I think she is even a worse version of Monika, because at least Monika in a way tries to redeem herself. this one does not. And for those who haven't played DDLC, actually I'm just straight up spoiling DDLC now, but oh well, I'm sure you guys have played it. Monika is pretty much the character that is behind all of the murders and terrible, disturbing things that happens to the characters. She has broken the fourth wall already, and she's directly communicating with you and is a psychotic killer pretty much. But actually, now that I think about it, Monika, I don't think she ever directly killed any of the characters. However, Miyuki directly kills both you and Aoi and the cat in a very disturbing manner. She just goes absolutely crazy if you go the Aoi way, as she wants you and only you, and the fact you betrayed her really pisses her off. So she comes out behind the bed, she was listening in the whole time, gets her old baseball bat out, and you can probably guess what happens next. And what's worse is there is actually some animal cruelty involved in this, the poor cat, oh god. And to be honest with you guys, when this first happened to me, I was absolutely shocked. I was not expecting this at all. The fact that Miyuki was under the bed the whole time, listening in, and then she crawled out and she's got those red eyes, it's just, oh my god, disgusting what they've done really. This is what will happen to you if you do end up choosing the Aoi way. You could go the Miyuki way, which is a lot less weirder than this, but you know, more straightforward, and I don't think many people wanted to go that way anyway. Now, I'm not gonna make a whole ass tutorial on how you get to this bit because it is slightly complicated, and especially what happens next, that's even more complicated to deal with, but pretty much you just have to make these certain choices. You get given quite a lot of choice in this game. Now get this, after Miyuki ends up brutally murdering everyone, including yourself, the game will nicely restart itself. Actually, we'll have an update before that, and everything will be completely different. At this point in time, the artwork, especially the menus, have been completely disfigured and changed by Miyuki herself, and now she pretty much controls the game all by herself. But this game's pretty smart. Even as you pause it and you try to save the game and whatever, which you can't, she will actually taunt you and make fun of you in the menus. A nice touch. But don't worry, because later on there is a way to resolve this issue. While it is painstaking and I had to look up tutorials to do it, you can do it. You see, she ended up removing Aoi, or so she thought. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that ending. So here you have it guys, a full picture painted of you and me and her, a love story. A very underrated game in this field, managing to do almost everything perfectly, especially scaring you as the player, or at least making you just a little bit disturbed. But anyway guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the future. Goodbye.